Hey guys, welcome to another show of Modern Health with Dr. Jane. I, of course, am Dr. Jane, a natural fertility expert and a naturopathic doctor. Today, I have a patient with me, Christina. I'm not going to introduce you. I'm going to get you to introduce yourself, and we're going to talk about your case, where you were, and where you are now. So say hello, tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christina, and been working with Dr. Jane for a year now. Yes, I'm a nutritionist, and I co-own a gym with my husband located smack dab center of New York State, and it has been a wild ride.
It has been a wild, wild ride. And I mean, I think it's basically exactly a year ago that we got some lab test results and we started to get to work. So tell everybody where you were. Why did you reach out in the first place?
Yeah, so August, oh my gosh, it's September. So yeah, it has been a year. I had 2 miscarriages before reaching out to you. We got pregnant in July 2021, June 2021, miscarried in July 2021, got pregnant in June 2022, miscarried July 2022, got pregnant July 2023, July is the month. But yeah, before, after the second miscarriage, just had zero support. I cannot tell you how many times I was told you have to miscarry a third time for us to basically run any tests on you, like see what's going on. So I didn't feel supported. It didn't make sense to me. I'm like, what do you mean that you are going to cross your fingers and hope you don't miscarry again, when if there is something I can do to optimize my health, and mind you, they ran zero blood work. Basic blood work wasn't even done until you did it. So I was just like, it didn't feel right. It didn't sit right, especially just with my background of health and nutrition. I'm like, this does not feel right. I do not like this. Like, I'm going to do something about it, and sought you out.
We had a stressful first trimester because of all the miscarriages. But I mean, we'll talk a little bit about the advocating that you had to do for yourself as well, because we're really excited to have you here. But, it's like pregnancy is a whole other journey.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, yeah, getting here has been crazy.
Yeah. Let's talk about a little bit before you even had the miscarriages, because it's not, sometimes typically you're saying the 3 miscarriages. That's what I hear. That's part of my message as well. It's like, don't wait. But the other piece is that you weren't just getting pregnant really easily. It wasn't like you were waiting on purpose for a year to get pregnant. For you, in fact, it was difficult to get pregnant, and then you were miscarrying. And so to wait for another miscarriage was potentially to wait for a whole other year before doing something. Is that right?
Exactly. And like, I kept saying that too. And, obviously this is a fertility podcast, so I'll say this, but like, my partner and I are pretty sexually active. It's not like, so when we weren't getting pregnant, I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like, I'm pretty sure we're probably more
and
sexually
you're a nutritionist
active.
and you own a gym. Like,
I'm like, this doesn't really make sense. I do think that we're more sexually active probably than a lot of people that seem to be like, snap the fingers and getting pregnant. I was also on birth control for 20 plus years and had zero idea of my cycle. My cycle has been 52 to 55 days has kind of like been the average. So didn't really know when I ovulated, because after doing the hormonal test through you, we realized I was like, super flatlined and everything. So I didn't have good, robust ovulatory symptoms. I just felt like, so I guess there's 2 ways I keep describing it. I almost felt so out of touch, because I felt like what I should have gone through naturally with puberty, I was almost going through then in my 30s, because I was on birth control at 13, 14, like in those reproductive years.
Totally.
Right. So I feel like it was happening, or I had to like connect to it in my 30s, which was really frustrating. And I felt gypped of that. And then I also just felt like these, best way I could describe it in the moment, were these like volcanic eruptions that like I didn't know when they were going to happen. And I'm like trying to navigate all of that. What does that mean? What's going on? Like, so that was frustrating. Yeah. So with that, yes, hard time getting pregnant, because I just don't know. And I'm like, okay, so you're going to have me wait another year to see if I miscarry, which that could be a year, 2 years. Like, I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, let's talk, because the history of being on birth control, I'm glad you already brought that up, but like you said, you kind of just skip this period of going through puberty and having the hormones turn on. Because like you're a nutritionist and you guys own a gym, and so you work out. So what's in your perspective was like still missing?
I think for me, it really came down to because I was, quote unquote, doing all the right things,
Hmm.
right? Like I had my nutrition pretty dialed in. Like I'm very aware of sleep and the stressors, right? Like none of that was new to me, right? I was moving my body, doing quote unquote all the things. So I think for me, really, that next step was like, what is going on internally? What is going on with my hormones? I've never had them tested. What's the actual answer with my period, right? They misdiagnosed me at 12 with PCOS, which is why I went on birth control. Find out, fast forward, when I was 30, 31, they were like, oh, sorry, like you never had PCOS. What are you talking about? I'm like, then why did I go on birth control? You told me I had right. So like I just never had any actual like foundational functional lab work done.
Yep.
So I almost felt like I was, throwing targets in the dark for a little bit. I'm like, I just don't know what to do moving forward. I think I'm doing all the things, but for me, I do believe I just needed that deeper layer.
What was the big things that we did together that you found was the thing that moved the needle the most for you?
I mean, we did like probably every test in the book, but I think the stool test
Hmm.
was super insightful because we found a lot about my liver, a little bit of like SIBO, the overgrowth from the E. coli in my gut. I wasn't metabolizing fat, so we had a lot of like liver on top of the birth control. We had a lot of things to work on with the liver. The cycle mapping test I thought was super fascinating because I had no idea where my estrogen, testosterone, progesterone levels were. So to see that, I was like, ooh, like I knew I wasn't good, but like now I see it. Right.
Yeah.
It kind of matched, sometimes you do feel like, am I crazy? And I just need to do these things and I just need to keep doing them? Or like, is there actually something going on? So seeing that, I guess, I mean, it made sense. It just kind of like made things more concrete for me.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Um,
find that's what it really does for people. And like even myself, when I run lab tests, like I don't know if you felt this, but sometimes like you're really anxious to see your lab results because
oh
you're
yeah.
just like, oh my God, you're gonna find something that's terribly wrong with me and I'm never gonna fix it. I have cancer, like I'm never gonna be able to have kids. And you just go down the spiral where in reality it's just like, no, it's just gonna show you the things that you already know.
Mhm.
And I think the conventional system is really good at training us to think that our issues are not fixable.
Yeah.
And then like once you're really bad, then you can take the medication and that's just going to be the rest of your life. Where in reality, it's like, no, we can fix all the things that we see, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It was nice to be able to see that from a data side standpoint too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And then like, what about the work? So seeing the labs, and then what are the actual things that we did together that you found was the big needle movers? And like I said, before we jumped on camera, and feel free to obviously jump in on this, but like your journey wasn't super smooth. It wasn't like we started doing all this stuff and you just felt magically better within weeks.
No.
Uh, so I'd love for you to touch on that because I think, like I told you, one of the biggest issues that I see with couples is that you give up a little
Yeah.
bit too soon on yourself and you jump onto the next trend or the next thing. Where in reality, it's like the foundation is the foundation and the basics are the basics. And sometimes you don't know how long it's going to take.
Yeah.
And it's not about stopping to do it. Sometimes it's actually having to do a little bit more, which feels wildly unfair because you're doing so much already.
Yes.
But
That is something I did feel a lot through the past years. It was really overwhelming for some of that. So I did have to like kind of shut that out and just really focus on me. But yeah, I mean, and I've told you, I would say more times than not over the past year, I've felt worse than I felt better.
mhm,
Right. And that's not to say the process isn't working or that's bad or anything like, no, it's just the process. So I
yeah.
had to, I mean, things that helped me through that, I would say talking to you and talking to my husband were huge. Of just like
Mhm.
being very upfront, like, hey, I'm frustrated, or this is how I feel, or I feel like garbage, just being honest with that. We're just like, yeah, everything's okay, and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, no, I feel like garbage. What's going on? Is this normal?
Yep.
Because then if you don't, you get this feeling of I think both of resentment towards maybe who you're working with or yourself of why it's not working, or resentment of other people that you see that it's working for and not for you.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I was telling you earlier before we started recording, it's like that meme of like the person, digging in a cave, and like they're digging and then they give up. But you actually see in the picture that right outside, like this much more digging, a couple more inches would be what you want on the other side.
Yeah.
And I had to remind myself of that a lot. And I was doing, like I said, obviously I'm a nutritionist, so I'm interested in this stuff anyway. So I dove headfirst, also coinciding with working with you, into tons of books. And a lot of the research, a lot of the books said the same stuff. And it was all the stuff we were working on.
Yep.
So like I knew that was it. It was just how much we had to dig at each. And I just had to keep reminding myself, like, this is it. Like, this is the basics. I don't need this next thing. I don't need the next shiny object. I just need to keep digging.
Mm-hmm.
While it's frustrating, while it's driving me insane, while maybe I don't feel good, I just have to keep going. And give yourself a year, give yourself a year and a half. Like, if things don't happen like that, that's something else I had to remind myself of. Christina, you were on birth control for 20 years. 20 years,
Yeah, 20 years is a long time.
Of your hormones being shut down, of you not knowing your cycle, right? Because obviously the birth control took over. You now then have got pregnant and miscarried. Your hormones have shifted over those 2 years. So like you can't expect this to happen in 6 months. Right? It's not going to happen that way. But I had to remind myself of that frequently.
Amazing for sharing that. But did you consider doing IVF? Did you consider, or was this more deeper about like, this is more just about you figuring it out for yourself?
I wanted to figure out myself. I actually told my mom, I don't remember what month it was. But maybe let's say it was at the 6-month mark. So I do remember her saying like, maybe this isn't going to work. Maybe you should reconsider other options. And that's something that maybe fair warning for other people, you might want to limit how much you do talk about it with other people. Because I kind of had to stop talking to her about it because I didn't like those thoughts coming in. Right. And I told her, I said, I will personally feel like a failure if I don't figure this out for myself. Like if I went and did IVF, and I know that's absolutely an option for some people, I personally did not feel I was there yet. I didn't feel like I had exhausted the options. I felt like I could do more. Right. That's something that you've always said, working together, like there's always more we can do. So IVF, and like, I wasn't even an open conversation for me yet.
Yep.
I didn't feel like I had done enough work or given it long enough to go that route.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I have lots of stuff that content around like how to know when you're going to choose the conventional route versus keep trying naturally. And part of my message is like, trying naturally doesn't mean you're not doing anything. In fact, further from the truth. Do you remember what would you say were a couple of the things that were really big needle movers, especially in the last little while that we did, that you noticed a big shift in like symptoms and how you felt? And
right in June. Yeah, it was like right June, July. I'd say the two things. One was mental, one was physical. Physical wise, we did the 7-day liver protocol, which was just the smoothies, into the 4-day fast.
And if you're like following Christina on social, you should, because she has some great presence on social media, but she shared all of that. And it's funny because I have some my patients who then start to follow you because I share your content, and they're like, they found it really helpful because then when they were going through it, they're just like, oh, and like she did all this stuff. And yeah, anyways.
Good. That's, I mean, sometimes you feel silly sharing on social media, but that's why. So people know, but that was a huge physical needle mover. I felt fantastic. My energy was great. My sex drive was increased. My bloating was drastically down. The puffiness and just the fluff that I kind of always say I feel like I have drastically went down. I didn't weigh myself, so I have no idea if I lost weight or not, but I definitely puffiness and inflammation. So physically, that was about like a 2-week period. Right in there.
It was 7 days of the actual, but then you also went into a fast. You did like a 3-day fast right into that.
Yep. And
that was more intuitive, like you felt, because you've been reading a lot of stuff and you were just like, I want to try this and see. Because during the fast, like where you just did the water fast, that was also when you noticed a big increase in sex drive.
Came back. I mean, the first day was fine. Day 2 and 3, like you said, were going to be the hardest, which were just like, my heart rate just jacked up super quick from even standing to, walking into the kitchen to get water and coming back. But then day 4, I ended up doing 4 days. I honestly, I could have gone longer, but I was just bored. I was bored. Yeah. Like I was feeling good. Yeah, energy was great. And then we actually got pregnant probably on day 3 of that, now in retrospect.
I know that. That's why I wanted to bring that up, because what I don't want people to think is that they did 7 day of a liver cleanse. Like we did 8 months of work prior to that, where the needle wasn't moving very much. And we've done so much stuff. And this is where it actually brought me to that mental and emotional piece for you, which I think you're going to talk about in a second, where it's like, hey, there's something else going on here. And there's like no amount of TUDCA, which is, a supplement that I prescribed. Like there's just no amount of TUDCA I can give you to help you shift in this, in the mental and emotional space. And like, we got to open up that door.
Yep.
But truthfully, it's like just the stuff that you did on the physical side. I think that was just what kind of solidified everything that we did, versus if we just started with that, I don't think you would have had the same results.
Right.
I don't know if you would agree with that. And
that's kind of an example of like, there's always more that you can do and there's more that you can dig. And that was an example, right? We were kind of, I don't want to say at a crossroads, but like, we've been doing a lot of work. It was 8 months worth of work and like not quite getting the response that I think we were looking for.
Totally.
So yeah, I was just
doing the energy was improving, the sleep was kind of improving, but nothing was like really drastic. Right. Not what I typically see as well. Like it's frustrating for me as a practitioner as well. I can feel your frustration, obviously, but to me, it's like, man, I'm missing something. I'm missing something because this person needs to be shifting, and it's just figuring it out together. And that's why it's like I love sharing your case right now, because we stuck to it and we figured it out.
Yeah, we
were right there.
We were right there. We just had to keep digging, which we did.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the physical biggest shift that I felt freaking fantastic. And then the mental side of things was me just doing a lot of my own mental energy work to really, because I always, and how many times I tell you too, if it kind of like, if it happens, it happens, or like, I kind of want to be a mom, but like, and I was kind of this like wishy-washy, never fully committed to like, I want to be a mom and I want to get pregnant. And that's a shift that happened right after the liver protocol, where I like literally the first time I remember, actually, I have a group text with a couple of my girlfriends from college. I remember one day I just texted them and I was like, I would like to get pregnant. Like, I want to be pregnant. And they were all like, what? Like, you've never said that so directly before. And I was like, you're right, I haven't, so it just took, I think also that of like the acknowledgement of like, yes, I do want to get pregnant. I mean, I would put my hands on my belly and talk to my belly so many times in the shower, like, talking to myself. And so that mentally was a shift where I finally was like open to it and like, I'm ready and accepting. But that took a while.
Yeah.
And that was conversations with you too, where you're like, when you said that, you're like, there's only so much TUDCA we can take.
Yeah.
It has to be a mental shift too.
Yeah. And I do find it's funny because, I just have a patient who finished the liver cleanse and most of it was like emotional for her. And she's like, well, I didn't expect this. And the idea is that we store energy in our, like emotions is energy. And when we are taking and moving things, like exercise is moving energy, right? That's why sometimes it really helps to process things. But with doing something as intense as like the liver cleanse, where you're only having smoothies 2 or 3 a day, and like all the other stimulus is gone, you're moving and shifting the liver while decreasing all the work, stress, and load that now when you shift that energy enough, it has to come out somewhere. And so it's just being open to that. But what I was going to ask you is like, how much of you not wanting to say that you're ready to be a mom was you like protecting yourself because you just didn't want to miscarry again?
That's a valid point. I would almost say that happened during the first trimester of almost not acknowledging or accepting that I'm pregnant, because being afraid that and that was like a way to protect myself of like, don't accept this yet.
Yeah.
But backtracking to then, yeah, I mean, I think there are a bunch of things wrapped up in it, the
Sure.
fear of it failing again, of like, for me, I think a lot of it came from almost like shame or almost like embarrassment of like, you're a nutritionist, you own a gym, you're supposed to know the body, yet you're struggling with this thing. And I know saying that out loud is ridiculous, and I know it's not true,
Yep.
but it's still a belief that was there. So I think potentially not verbalizing it was like a way of being like, it's okay if it didn't work.
Because I didn't really try.
Because exactly, like I didn't really try, so it's okay if it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes any sort of sense.
It does. I think we protect ourselves in weird ways. I'll say there's 4 things that you need to conceive, like good quality egg, good quality sperm, the desire to have a child from both partners needs to be there. And then the baby room needs to be ready. So like you talking to your belly, your womb, that's like some of that is just you putting really good energy into your womb and saying like, hey, I'm ready and I'm cultivating. And like our menstrual cycle is going to dictate how much blood we lose, how regular it is, all that jazz. Like, how much clotting, how much pain we have is going to dictate that. But the desire piece, I think a lot of it, a lot of my patients don't have a problem with that because they've been, let's say, trying for a long time. But it's not necessarily that it's the desire that's missing, but a fear of admitting it or how it's going to change your life. This usually I see in my business owners and entrepreneurs because our life is so like our health and how we function is really dependent on our business as well. And so I have a couple of patients that I'm working with right now that are in that same boat where it's like, I kind of want to get pregnant, but I can see that hesitation. So I think it's really powerful for you to share that.
Yes.
Because
No,
it is a real thing for some people, it's
absolutely
not for everybody, but it is for some.
Absolutely. And it's like, it's never been my desire, right? Like, I know there's some people that like can't wait to have kids and that's what they've always dreamt of. And for me, I haven't been that way.
Yeah.
And also being an entrepreneur, like it's scary because even still, I'm like, I do not see this. I do not see how it's going to work. How am I going to be able to do this? How are we going to travel? And is it going to pull me away? Am I going to get behind? Right. So then there's all these things that come up and then you're like, is this what we want? Like it's happening. So like, so there for sure there's those,
yep.
those fears are very real. Both
yeah. And then it can get away in the way, like physically you're holding on to that energy. And I felt that too. I remember that appointment where you said, I'm ready to be pregnant. I want to be pregnant. I'm not beating around the bush anymore. It's just like, okay, once my cycle gets regular and, it's like you got your cycle within like that 40-day and then 50, it was still, but there was more signs of ovulations. There was more signs of things moving along. Literally 2 weeks later, you're like, yeah, I'm just like tired and taking naps. And I'm like, okay, how about we take a pregnancy test? If you're taking naps.
We're on day 62 of my cycle here.
Yeah. Day 62 and you're taking naps every day. I think it's time.
And you're right. We were positive.
Yeah, that's it. Let's talk about where are you now and a little bit of the journey. I mean, some of what you have to share is really valuable around the beginning part of the journey, because I know it was really stressful.
Yeah, that sucked, to be just totally blunt, like weeks. So we found out we were pregnant at, I think it was like the week 5 around there. So when like the pregnancy test, came back positive. So weeks like 5, 6 to our ultrasound at week 11 were brutal. Yeah, I mean, I was not getting support from the conventional medical system. Tests that, me and you have discussed that we wanted done, I was not getting done. I kept getting the excuse again of like, well, we don't do this until you've miscarried a 3rd time. Like, I don't.
Yeah. And the test we were asking for is like, let's test progesterone, let's test like thyroid. But progesterone was the main one to see where it is. And then I think you ran your own, what's it called? The pregnancy hormone test.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The HCGs I was running.
The HCG. Yeah. You were running on your own.
Yeah. I mean, all that, I just, in the best way I can describe it was like my nervous system was buzzing. Like I could not calm down. I had so much anxiety, especially that I wasn't getting the support. Cause I was like, I could be miscarrying right now. And I'm because you're not doing these things for me, I'm like,
Totally. Yes.
it's just like, just give me these. And it was nothing crazy, as you said, it was nothing crazy. So that was brutal. Um, we ended up getting, because as we mentioned, my cycle was so long, we had to get an ultrasound early to date the pregnancy. So we had an ultrasound at week 7. Shout out to the ultrasound technician. He was freaking fantastic. So that was a very emotional experience for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
For them to say, there is a heartbeat, and that was at week 7. That was already further than we had made it the past two years. We made about 6 and 2, 6 and 5, something in there for both pregnancies. But yeah, I mean, just
What did you learn through that experience in terms of advocating for yourself and all of that? Like, what can people take away from it?
You have to keep asking. You have to, like, they're going to say no. They're going to say this isn't what we do. And you just have to stick to your guns of what you believe. Like when they said no, I'm like, I don't care. This is what I want. And I know what I'm asking for isn't anything crazy. It's not out of the norm, right? If I was asking for something ridiculous, like maybe I'd been a little bit more hesitant, but the fact that, like, obviously we had been working together for so long that I had been doing my own research. I'm like, I refused to take that as an answer because I knew it was nothing out of the ordinary of what to ask for.
Yeah.
But I mean, because there's so many people that would just be like, oh, well, like, okay, that's not what you do. And I'm like, I'm not miscarrying again. I am not risking miscarrying a 3rd time.
Mm-hmm.
It took us a year to get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be 37 by the time that happens. Yeah. Like I'm going to do everything in my power to make this as viable as possible right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I was shocked as well. So we ran lab work together. I think it was like week 7. And that's when like we found out thyroid was off. And then for the conventional system to be brushing off thyroid function in pregnancy was like, a new level for me. And it actually allows me to support my patients better. It's like, it's unfortunate that you had to go through that experience, but now I can prep, my patients who are going to start trying, and they've had those 2 miscarriages and they're really nervous about it. And it's like, okay, here's what we need to do.
And so much of that did come down to education, because if I didn't know that wasn't normal, I would have accepted what they said to me. Like, oh, that's not a big deal. Or like, T3, T4 look fine.
It's just
like,
normal for me to be anxious.
Right. But like, no, that's not normal, especially being pregnant. Yep. So I had to push for, and finally she's like, I don't feel comfortable putting you on thyroid medication, so I'm going to send you off to endocrinology. I'm like, beautiful. Thank you. Finally.
Yeah. Send me to someone who is comfortable.
And the second endocrinology, she was like, absolutely, like zero hesitation, was great, and put me on exactly what I wanted right away. But I had to push for that. And that was like 3 weeks of me arguing. And that wasn't even the progesterone argument. That was a whole other argument.
Yeah, that was a whole other argument. And you go to a doctor and they tell you something, and whether it's like you're infertile or you have PCOS or whatever, like, let's use that as a reminder that that's just one person, and that you probably need to get a second, maybe a third, or even a 4th opinion, because it took you a couple of doctors before, and you're kind of in between 2 states. So it took a couple of doctors before finding that endocrinologist that was like, oh yeah, absolutely. And here's the testing that you need to get done for thyroid. And if you would have stopped at that first one, then you would have just said, okay, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess I can just stop.
Yeah. You just have to, that goes back to what I said earlier, like, you have to keep asking, you have to keep questioning, you have to get second opinions. I, at this point in time, assume everyone is stupid and lying or like just doesn't know. And I'm like, that's how I'm going to operate moving forward.
Yes. And they need to earn your trust.
Yes. Yeah. That is, earning trust is actually where I'm at with the current physician. Like, I'm going to question, I don't have a reason to right now, but I'm going to continue to just question anything, because I haven't earned her trust yet. Like, what we've done has worked. Right. So I'm going to do what I know until I can earn your trust.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I mean, like, tell us where you are now. You're 15 weeks pregnant. Things are going to the day. Yeah. Things are going well. Like, you're feeling good. Give us a little bit of the good stuff that's going on.